Creature a man, he found, implicated a lot more than rather than shooting a cannon. Above a year back, he says he was constrained by Houthi mob to get up weapon on the front lines of Yemen's civilian warfare. I saw the human beings near me get annihilated, he says. Sitting following to his mom and enclosed by 8 siblings, he recounts his disgusting experiences, that turned on a severe injury to his foot. They would get a shot, in the chief, or in the trunk. I was really frightened. While the shell hit me, I was moribund. I was surmounted by terror and concern. Though currently, I yet sense the identical path. For the shelling how inflicted his leg trauma, he says he was at the front line. His comrade kid soldiers were weeping of. I sat following to them and cried too much, he recalls. He couldn't believe of whatever else, he says, not though his favorite animals. Yemen officials in the west backed by the government in the southward trust down there are more than rather than 6,000 kid soldiers through the nation, and suspicion how as lot as 20,000 family may requirement assist in war rehab. The nation has been involved in meltdown with 2014, while Iran-backed Houthi mob took above the equity Sana'a and some main cities. A coalition led by Saudi Arabia has salaried a war campaigning to prop up the at international level acknowledged by the government of Abdurrabbu Mansur Hadi and struggle the mob with March 2015, mostly via airstrikes and an continuing airborne, earth and sea siege. The war has inflicted world shout. Above 8,600 human beings include dead and almost 50,000 include been injured with March 2015, on to the Planet Public Health Organization. The nation as well many faces one of the planet's lowest cholera vibrio outbreaks in contemporary story. Recent December, the UN's human focal point for Yemen told he was deep broken by installation citizen human loss and told it was testimony of the full neglect for humane lifetime how all parties, consisting the Saudi-led coalition, go on to shaw in the ridiculous warfare. Family in Yemen's war. The UN one day duplicated Yemen's war, a family's meltdown, and reasoned how youthful human beings were bearing the main burden of the dispute's human disasters. The Saudi-led coalition has been accused by the UN for creature over largest of the Yemen warfare's kid human loss. The Registrar Gen's yearly paper on family and gunman dispute says the Saudi-led coalition's bomb of mob in Yemen led to same murder and maiming of family, in 683 kid human loss. Saudi Arabia told the paper is imbued in inexact and deceptive data. The realm's UN envoy Abdallah Y. al-Mwalimi told his nationality carried out same maximal extent of thoroughness and caution to escape citizen damage. While it comes to kid soldiers, Houthis arm largest of the accused, the UN told in a paper recent year. Houthis were over 359 out of 517 checked cases of kid fight recruiting in 2016, times 76 family were enlisted by pro-Fi government gunman groups named as the famous Impedance and the coalition-backed Yemen troop, on to the paper. Al-Qaeda and its related organizations were over 56 recruiting cases. A Houthi formal has named accountable of the team's enrollment of kid soldiers overdone, and claims how formal management is hard to resist the experience. At times, and out of expertise of our war management, a parental accompanies his youthful son in him to the battlefield. We contrast the and strength them to go household. We include refundable hundreds of such a cases and will go on to do as, he adds. Yunus says his household is portion of the pro-Fi government famous Impedance. While the Houthis came to detention his dad in Amran, Polar of Sana'a, he crouched on their building's rooftop shooting a car gun to frighten them off. He says he stored them off for length, quite to save his dad's flea. Family love. Yunus can be spotty on roads connection Yemen towns, owning rifles as they wander via the abandon. The issue of Yemen's kid soldiers precedes the civilian warfare, and spans its whole policy range. On to the UN. Yemen's kid soldiers are as youthful as 11. In supplement to charming in fight, family guardsmen checkpoints and buildings, patrolling areas and act as porters, the identical UN paper told. Former child soldiers speak their stories at a Saudi-funded rehab center for kid soldiers in the abandoned town of Marib. Yunus counterparts, mainly former Houthi soldiers, say on their roles in fight. Saleh draws a thumbnail of a pickup truck lorry transport a Katyusha missile. He points to the motorist in the figure. "House me," he says. At 13, he transportable the missile launchers for Houthis to the front line. Naji, 13, says the mob had him pulling corpse bodies of the box. A date, "I looked at the flesh and it was my gaffer. I cried. I didn't aware which to do. I couldn't drag his flesh of," Naji recalls. At the sports ground, the guys collect about a chamber rack and whinny, as although dividing and within jest. "The looks love the missile launchers," one of them says. Bashir and Abdullah, 13, use it as a prop up in a history how they are thirsty to speak of their amity and flee of the battleground. They stay on each party of the rack. Description how they utilize to flame Katyusha missile strike for the Houthis. The problem of launch missile strike came as portion of their growth in the ranks in the direction the end of their 3-year skimp as soldiers, they tell. Up how, they were messengers and done tea for soldiers. An animation Bashir tells the history, he would loading the missile launcher in munition and Abdullah would flame it. The Houthis said them infidels were on the some party of the front lines, they remember. One date, the rocket backfired, flaming Abdullah's lawfoot. Their families took the as an prospect to drag them off the battleground. Bashir wears a broad smiling as he puts his arm about Abdullah's shoulders. They are pride of their durable amity, that preceded the warfare. Their amity appears to be the rock of their restoration. Bashir beating a red air balloon as he hugs the Shire Abdullah. Same Houthis rely on the family since they are susceptible. And they can be readily coaxed in arms, cash and though meal and water supply. They as well get benefit of their kid passion, Abdelrahman El-Khatbi, CEO of the Saudi-funded Marib Rehabilitation Center, told. Onto a 2017 Pardon World paper, the Houthis pledge cash incentives to the families of kid soldiers, pledge monthly average pensions of about $80 to $120 if the kid were to dead. Houthis will printing monument posters for dead kid soldiers, the paper says. Onto the UN, kid recruitment to the Profi government famous impedance were frequently reasoned by a wish to save revenue for their families. A growth in poverty reduction and the close collapse of the formation framework include switched recruiting. An alleged 2 millionth family are out of high school in Yemen, wherever insistent fight has leftward more than rather than 1,600 schools partly or fully ruined, onto UNICEF. El-Khatbi says Houthis paint a lot of such family in their ranks by take them to sectarian classes and training them jihad chants to increase their passion. Following the sectarian implementation, he says, the family are taking into account weapon. At the rehabilitation center, the family propose up detailed information of their flee of the battleground. As in Yunus, largest controlled to get off following and trauma or time accompanying an injured boyfriend off of the front line. Yunus defected time he was convalescent of his leg injury at the clinic. He'd done his way to Marib, a town fair external Houthi held Yemen, winding Houthi fighters and some gunman groups on the path, he says. In How abandoned city, he reunited in his household, who had undertaken shelter in a cinder block building. Marib has seen its people bulk up of 400,000 to 1.8 millionth above the history 2-year thanks to an inflow of refugees of Houthi-controlled areas, officials tell. Yunus mom Samira says the household is 7 months over on the lease and cladding expulsion. Nightmares of a kid man. The rehabilitation program Yunus registered in is yet in its childhood. It has purified almost 200 younger generation in 4-person centers through the nation. Convalescent of the injury is sluggish. Nightmares yet torment Yunus and occasionally shed in fact. Overnight at high school I could see a person on the side looking at me, he recalls. How overnight he mined who was departure to murder his friends in a neighboring chamber and later go for him. He blocked oneself in his chamber. Yunus says he has stopped smoke and chew quat, a usually utilized sheet amphetamine-like narcotic particularly famous amongst soldiers. He is behind in high school. His mom Samira says Yunus has go behind, politer and in superior etiquette. He utilized to wake up at overnight amazed, shouting, "Same Houthis, the Houthis. They are upcoming to get me," Samira says. "I would go to him, speak him to say a pray thou are there in me, not in them. God has stored you of them and driven you to us.